I think it's important to distinguish two moments. The first is the crisis itself, during the crisis, and probably after and before the crisis. What are the two moments where the board should act? Obviously, this is an important demonstration of the difference of the roles between a board and between a management. Crisis has exacerbated this difference. If you look at the crisis itself, certainly the board should support and help the management, not really to make decisions, because what the characteristic of a crisis is the speed of the decision you have to make, and probably board is not equipped to make a short-term, immediate decision, but certainly to give the guidance. One of the things that is quite important is to understand that all the arbitrage that we have to do during a crisis generally involve contradictory interests between stakeholders. And this is where the board is so important. You have seen during the crisis some decisions that have been made by companies, like brutal, reckless laid off of thousands of people without any care. And this is clearly a situation that the board should monitor and avoid. And this is why I'm saying this is a situation where the interests of two stakeholders are conflicting. So I think this is a very important moment where the board should be there, should not interfere with the day-to-day, but should support and make sure that the decisions are taken consistent with the purpose of the company, the interest of all the stakeholders, and in a very professional and calm way. So this is during the crisis. After the crisis, or before the crisis, it's obvious that you cannot predict everything, and that you have to position the company to be the best, to have the best resilience possible to anything which has to come. And this is where the word of resilience take all its meaning. Because as we don't know what is coming, resistance is a theoretical position. You cannot be resistant to something that you don't know. You cannot be resistant to something of magnitude you have no idea. So you have to be resilient. And resilient is a quite interesting idea about you don't need to be stronger to resist to what is coming. You have to be more flexible. You have to be quicker and able to come back as soon as you can to a way of functioning, even if it is deteriorated. But you have to choose what is really important for you and to protect what is really important for you and dimension your company and your processes to be resilient. During the crisis, let's make sure that we help the management in reacting without losing the North Pole, which is the purpose and the interest of all the stakeholders. And after and before the crisis, let's make sure that we have the time, that we have in our agenda of boards, the time to structure the company and its governance to be resilient to the future crisis that for sure will come. You have seen recently some declaration of Business Roundtable or big investors or banks or even government, like in France, where we are rewriting we have been rewriting some part of the law defining both the companies and the governance of the company. We seem to have rediscovered that the shareholder primacy that we have been taken for the North Pole of any relationship or any governance or decision in a company is something first quite new, very recent, a few decades, and it's not leaving us anywhere safe. We have been taking all the other stakeholders for granted and saying that we have to serve God shareholder interest. By the way, we could redefine what is shareholders between founders, between share traders or short-term traders or microsecond traders. So this timing issue, this time issue, is quite important. But we seem to are moving now, too slowly, but we are moving from a shareholder primacy, profit, short-term profit company to a stakeholder interest, shared value, and long-term view for the company. And what is interesting is between these two positions, board is probably the only place in the governance of a company which has both the legitimacy and the responsibility, the duty, to make sure that first, all the stakeholders are known, identified, and we are clear about what are their expectations and what are the impacts that we are creating for them. And then the obvious, necessary, and conflicting interest of all the stakeholders should be arbitrated somewhere. And this is at the level of the board of directors. This is where we need to have people that have the right organization with the right committees, the right agenda, so time to talk with the stakeholder, to make sure that we understand why they are supporting the company, and make the decision in the interest of the purpose of the company. At the end of the day, all comes to why do you exist? And I don't know of any company that have been created one day by a founder waking up in the morning and saying, I'm going to create a company. And why are you creating this company? Oh, just to make money. It doesn't exist. A company has been created for a purpose, and the relationship that is being established between shareholders and the company is a fundamental, obviously, relationship, but this is not the only one. A company is much more than just a relationship with shareholder. It's a conjunction of interest, of look, and that are not at all managed under ownership relationship. You have much more complex and much more interesting relationship that are being built to form a company. And this is what the stakeholder company or the purpose company is all about. We have been managing company to avoid risk or to make sure that these risks are not destroying what we want to achieve. And we consider that risks were kind of silo in each on the box, and that we knew the size or the frequency of all this manifestation of risk. We have been disrupting what some scientists are calling the planet boundaries, or we have been crossing these planet boundaries, and we have opened a Pandora box. We certainly don't know what we have done, and we don't know the consequence of what we have done. The only thing we know is that we have disrupted a system. We have not disrupted part of we have disrupted a whole system. And you see that in the physical manifestation of risk, like fire or flooding, these two things are linked, and we cannot approach the risk of climate change without understanding this. The coronavirus is a good example of this, because if you look, for example, at the matrix of the World Economic Forum about risk, you see that on the upper right corner, where the higher risk, more frequent, and with more impact are put, you have climate change and biodiversity loss. On the left side of the matrix, you have pandemia increase. And you all know, we all know that climate change plus biodiversity loss means pandemia. Yet, we still consider these three risks as differently placed on the matrix, when we should consider a kind of cluster of risk, systemic risk. So this is the first thing that we have to understand. The second thing we have to understand is, and we can come back to the company now, is why are you covering risk? And who are you trying to protect against this risk? I tend to believe that what you want to protect is the long-term existence of your company. That comes from, are you consistent with your purpose? Do you have a secure and safe license to operate? And all the stakeholders that you are with you, with whom you have relationship, are they happy with you? Do they like you? Do they want you to continue to operate or not? And this is the kind of basic decision you have to make when you build a risk matrix. And after that, you have to consider that because we have done what we have done, we are entering into what we call in some organization I work with, like the World Energy Council, we are entering a world of constellation of disruption, which is you cannot look at risk individually now. You have to look at a constellation of risks that are interacting all to each other. So I think the crisis has revealed a few truths that we were good at hiding. I think it has also, interestingly, puts on stage something that we had forgotten for years, which is why this company exists and is this company really useful for the society? You see that in Europe, at least, you have, I don't know the numbers because they are changing every day, but you have around 1 trillion, thousands of billions being used to bail out companies or sectors. Interestingly, some of these companies are being bailed out with some condition attached to the bailout. And the conditions are attached either under criteria of green criteria or non-aggression to the environment, or because this sector is judged as being fundamental and important for the society. So I am not talking about increasing the purchasing power of the healthcare system. I am saying, okay, do I want to bail out this company or this sector, and for which reason? And then try that this bailout is not coming back to where we were before the crisis, but coming to a new world that we call better. And this is all around the purpose of the company and what we call the social license to operate, which is a fair evaluation by the society of why do you exist and why do I let you exist and why do I allow you to use all the commands that we have been created during generations for you funder or shareholders to make money. So this concept of why do we exist? Do I really want you to exist? Which was kind of implicit before, but never really translated, and certainly never challenged against who do you serve? Who do you want to make happy? And here I am not talking about just communication. You have seen some example of company that said, no, I will supply mask or I will supply some protection equipments. And clearly they were just doing this to make sure that their image was good. And this has not resisted to a careful analysis by the public. So the sincerity of the action of the company have been certainly challenged, and most of the time they were not only okay but truly generous, and they are going out of this crisis with a much bright color. In some cases, it was not so bright, and the way they have managed the crisis, or the way the crisis have revealed what they were really doing in the society, will certainly harm them or even make them disappear for the good of the society. So this is where the board is so important, and this is where the board should be rewarded if he had spent enough time before the crisis to make sure that the company operation and existence was based upon or embedded in a purpose that the public or the society could recognize and feel useful, and then grant them what we call the social license to operate, which is the right and to exist and to use the commons that have been built by generation after generations.